Wait. Before we go any further, I need you to see this. Just this week, a study out of Harvard University confirmed something that's been whispered in cardiology circles for years, but never quite makes it to your regular doctor's appointment. Cholesterol doesn't act alone. And yet, 90% of the people I know still believe that skipping eggs at breakfast is enough to keep their heart protected. Today I'm going to tell you what's actually happening inside your arteries. Fair warning, it's going to sound like a horror movie script, but with a hopeful ending, I promise. There's something that probably nobody ever told you. Not in school, not at the doctor's office, not anywhere. Your arteries are not pipes. They're not garden hoses that simply clog up over time. They're a living ecosystem. Inside your blood vessels, there's a microscopic layer called the endothelial glycocalyx. I know that sounds complicated, but picture it as a tiny forest. A kind of ultra-fine lawn made of proteins and sugars that lines every inch of your arteries from the inside. That forest is your first line of cardiovascular defense. It keeps toxins at bay, regulates blood flow, and prevents fats from sticking to the walls. Basically, it's the silent guardian of your heart. The problem is that guardian is dying, and your everyday lifestyle is what's killing it. When you regularly consume refined sugars, and I don't just mean sugar in your coffee, I mean white bread, boxed juices, breakfast cereals, your body generates toxic compounds that science calls advanced glycation end products. They act like acid on that microscopic forest. Excess sodium, high blood pressure, a sedentary lifestyle. All of it bombards that fragile structure until it weakens and peels away. And when the glycocalyx disappears, your arteries are left completely exposed, like a soldier stripped of armor in the middle of battle. That's when cholesterol enters the picture. Because LDL, the small particles of bad cholesterol, no longer glide with the blood flow. They penetrate the arterial wall, and once they're in there, they oxidize. Think of it like a piece of iron left out in the rain. It rusts, and that oxidized cholesterol is so toxic that your immune system panics. It sends in its elite cells, macrophages, to clean up the mess. These cells arrive, devour the oxidized cholesterol, and literally die trying. They fill up with toxic fat and collapse. Pathologists call them foam cells. Oh, and here's the bad joke of the episode. What do you call a foam cell that doesn't do its job? A macrofailure. Sorry, I'm a health guy, not a comedian. The point is that thousands of those dead cells accumulate over time and form a necrotic core inside your artery. This isn't just accumulated fat. It's an infected biological wound that can't heal. You're building a time bomb inside your own chest, and it doesn't even hurt. Here's something I find one of the most disturbing pieces of data I've ever read: antibacterial mouthwash. Millions of people wake up every morning, brush their teeth, and rinse with those blue or green liquids that kill bacteria. They feel like they're taking care of themselves. I used to do it too. In fact, up until about 2 years ago, I was using one of the strongest mouthwashes on the market, completely convinced it was the right thing to do. Turns out, your mouth is home to communities of beneficial bacteria that are absolutely essential for producing nitric oxide. This is the protective gas of your blood vessels, the chemical messenger that tells your arteries, relax, dilate, let the blood flow. By killing those bacteria with an aggressive daily rinse, you're blocking your own natural production of that healing gas. You're literally adding stiffness to your blood vessels while thinking you're practicing good hygiene. You think you're taking care of yourself, and you're actually doing yourself harm. Now for the part that most doctors won't tell you in a 15-minute appointment. You have a cellular repair team living inside you. Endothelial progenitor cells that are born in your bone marrow and travel through your bloodstream looking for cracks in your arteries to patch them up. Like molecular engineers working the night shift while you sleep. But as you age, or when you lead a sedentary, poorly nourished life, that team shrinks dramatically. And clinical evidence clearly shows that low levels of these cells strongly predict serious cardiovascular events. The good news is you can multiply those cells, not with a supplement, not with a miracle tea, but with concrete decisions I'm about to walk you through right now. Here's where I'll share my personal take, knowing it stirs up debate. I believe the conventional medical system has reduced cardiovascular health to a single number on a blood test: total cholesterol. And I think that's a massive mistake. There are people with normal cholesterol whose arteries are chronically inflamed, and people with high cholesterol who have flexible, healthy vessels because they manage systemic inflammation well. The number doesn't tell the whole story. And if your doctor is only looking at that number without ordering a high-sensitivity C-reactive protein, without checking your homocysteine, without measuring your pulse pressure, they're looking at the finger when they should be looking at the moon. So what actually works? Let's go through it piece by piece. First, protect and restore the glycocalyx. Omega-3 is probably the molecule with the strongest cardiovascular evidence in all of clinical nutrition. And that's not just my opinion. The REDUCE-IT study, published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2018, followed more than 8,000 high cardiovascular risk patients for nearly 5 years. Those who took high doses of EPA, a specific type of omega-3, had a 25% reduction in major cardiovascular events. That's not a small number. That's huge. But here's a nuance that almost nobody tells you. Not all omega-3s are the same. EPA and DHA have different mechanisms. EPA has a more potent anti-inflammatory effect at the arterial wall level. DHA is more relevant for the brain. If your goal is cardiovascular, look for supplements with high EPA content, or better yet, eat sardines, mackerel, and wild salmon 3 times a week. Real food always wins. Vitamin D also has direct evidence. A meta-analysis published in the European Journal of Preventive Cardiology analyzed 21 studies and found that low vitamin D levels are consistently associated with greater arterial stiffness. Your skin produces vitamin D from sunlight, but if you spend most of your time indoors or live somewhere with limited sun, there's a good chance you're deficient without knowing it. Worth checking. Second, manage cholesterol through the gut, not just with pills. Beta-glucans from oats and barley are, alongside statins, the intervention with the strongest evidence for lowering LDL. And that's not a wellness influencer talking. That's the US FDA, which officially approved in 1997 the claim that 3 grams of oat beta-glucans per day reduce cardiovascular risk. How does it work? These compounds form a viscous gel in your intestine that literally traps cholesterol-loaded bile acids and removes them from the body. Your liver, now short on those acids, has to pull LDL from your blood to make more. The result is a natural, sustained drop in bad cholesterol. Just 3 grams a day, roughly a generous bowl of oatmeal at breakfast, is enough to see real clinical differences within 4 to 6 weeks. And here I bring in the portfolio diet, which is basically the most underrated strategy in all of nutritional cardiology. A study published in JAMA by Dr. David Jenkins, the same scientist who invented the concept of the glycemic index, no less, showed that combining 4 specific food groups can lower LDL by 28 to 35%. Those groups are soy protein, nuts, viscous fibers like oats, and plant sterols. Plant sterols deserve a moment of their own because they're fascinating. They're molecules found in plants whose structure is so similar to human cholesterol that they literally fool your intestine. They compete with the cholesterol in your food and block its absorption. 2 grams a day, which you can get from avocado, sunflower seeds, extra virgin olive oil, and some fortified foods, have been consistently associated with LDL reductions of 8 to 15%. Third, nitric oxide, the gas your arteries desperately need. A study published in the journal Hypertension in 2015 took patients with high blood pressure, gave them beet juice for 4 weeks, and measured their blood pressure before and after. Systolic pressure dropped by an average of 8 millimeters of mercury. For context, that's comparable to the effect of some first-line antihypertensive medications. Why? Beets are one of the most concentrated sources of plant nitrates on the planet. Those nitrates, as they pass through the bacteria in your mouth and through your body, convert into nitric oxide. And nitric oxide tells your arteries to relax, dilate, and let blood flow. Arugula actually has even more nitrates than beets. Spinach, celery, romaine lettuce. The entire spectrum of dark leafy greens is a factory of natural vasodilation. You don't need exotic supplements. You need a salad. And if you add regular aerobic exercise on top of that, the effect multiplies dramatically. A meta-analysis published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine analyzed 270 studies involving more than 35 million people and concluded that regular moderate exercise has a cardiovascular impact comparable to, and in some cases greater than, conventional medications for blood pressure and cholesterol. Moderate. Regular. That means brisk walking, swimming, cycling. You don't need to train for a marathon. Fourth, polyphenol, the molecular guardians nobody talks about enough. Extra virgin olive oil is not just a healthy fat. It's liquid medicine. The Prodimed study, one of the largest and most rigorous nutritional clinical trials in history, conducted in Spain with nearly 7,500 high cardiovascular risk participants, showed that adding extra virgin olive oil to the diet reduced major cardiovascular events by 30% compared to a conventional low-fat diet. 30%. With food, not a drug. Its phenolic compounds, especially oleocanthal and oleuropein, act as antioxidants that protect LDL particles from oxidizing. And remember what we learned earlier. LDL isn't dangerous on its own. It becomes a weapon when it oxidizes inside the artery wall. Olive oil interrupts that process. Flavonoids from dark cocoa also have solid evidence. A meta-analysis published in the BMJ found that regular consumption of dark chocolate with more than 70% cocoa is associated with reduced blood pressure and improved endothelial function. This isn't an excuse to eat an entire bar. We're talking 20 to 30 grams a day of quality cacao. But the evidence is real. And green tea. Several epidemiological studies in Japan, where consumption is extremely high, show consistent correlations between regular green tea intake and lower incidence of coronary disease. The catechins in green tea, especially EGCG, have direct anti-inflammatory effects on the vascular endothelium. 3 cups a day. Without sugar, obviously. 5th, sleep. The cardiovascular risk factor that nobody puts on the same list as tobacco. This strikes me as a scandal of modern preventive medicine, and I say that with full conviction. Chronically sleeping less than 6 hours per night has a devastating cardiovascular impact, and it's just as well documented as smoking, but nobody treats it with the same urgency. A study published in the journal Sleep analyzed more than 30,000 adults over several years and found that sleeping less than 6 hours is associated with a 20% higher risk of heart attack and 15% higher risk of stroke, independent of other risk factors. Independent, meaning that even if you eat well, exercise regularly, and don't smoke, if you sleep poorly, your cardiovascular risk remains elevated. Why? Because during deep sleep, your body does its greatest vascular repair work. It's when those endothelial progenitor cells we talked about earlier are most active. It's when blood pressure drops and the heart rests. It's when cortisol, one of the most inflammatory molecules that exists when it becomes chronic, gets regulated. Sleep hygiene is not a luxury for people with free time. It's a first-line cardiovascular intervention. 6th, chronic stress, the inflammation you can't see but that kills you. Acute stress isn't the problem. Chronic stress, that state of permanent alert that most people are living in right now, is literally cardiotoxic. Chronically elevated cortisol directly damages the vascular endothelium, promotes plaque formation, and increases blood viscosity. A study published in the journal Circulation found that people with sustained high levels of psychological stress have a significantly higher risk of coronary events, even after controlling for factors like diet, exercise, and smoking. Meditation, diaphragmatic breathing, and time in nature are not alternative wellness practices. They have direct cardiovascular evidence. A meta-analysis by the American Heart Association found that mindfulness meditation significantly reduces blood pressure in hypertensive patients. The mechanism is clear. It lowers cortisol, activates the parasympathetic nervous system, and that translates into vasodilation and reduced load on the heart. 10 minutes of slow, conscious breathing per day. It's one of the cheapest and most accessible cardiovascular interventions that exists, and almost nobody prescribes it. The strategy summary, because I know that's a lot. You don't need to do everything at once. Nobody changes everything overnight and actually sticks with it. But if I had to give you the 5 highest impact levers based on evidence, they would be these. 1. Eat real omega. 3 times a week. 2. A bowl of oatmeal every day. 3. Extra virgin olive oil as your main fat. 4. Dark leafy greens at every meal. And 5. Sleep 7 to 8 hours as if your heart depends on it. Because it literally does. The rest, the cacao, the green tea, the meditation, the plant sterols, are additional layers that amplify everything above. But without those 5 foundations, no supplement in the world is going to save you. And on that point, there's really no room for debate. There are 2 saboteurs that the standard script doesn't emphasize nearly enough. The first is the gut microbiome. When you regularly eat processed red meat in excess, pathogenic bacteria in your gut digest the choline and carnitine from those foods and release a compound that your liver converts into something called TMAO. This TMAO circulates through your blood and acts as a direct accelerator of vascular inflammation. It doesn't just add fat to the equation. It hacks your own gut bacteria to attack your arteries from the inside. The second is tobacco. And here I need to be direct. There is no safe amount. 1 cigarette a day, smoking occasionally, vaping just at parties. All of it causes massive destruction of those endothelial progenitor cells that repair you. The smoke arrives before the repair cell does, and it kills it. But here's what I most want you to walk away with. Your arteries are not a sealed fate. The studies by Dr. Ornish and Dr. Esselstyn, researchers I've followed closely for years and whose methodology I consider some of the most courageous in modern cardiology, demonstrated through actual angiograms that consistent lifestyle interventions can shrink plaques, stabilize them, and improve blood flow in arteries that were on the verge of critical failure. I'm not talking about magic. I'm talking about a diet rich in plants, active stress management, regular movement, and eliminating toxins. The body responds, and it responds fast. The moment you put out the cigarette, the moment you change what goes on your plate, the repair cells start circulating again. The endothelium calms down. Rigid arteries begin recovering their lost flexibility. Every bite you put in your body is an instruction you're giving your cells. Every step you take is a survival signal for your vessels. You don't need perfection. You need consistency. Start at your next meal. Thank you for watching. I hope you walk away with this. Your arteries are not a sealed fate. With small, consistent changes, your body can heal. You don't need perfection, just persistence. Start at your next meal. See you in the next video. Take care.